Hello friends, this is Adam with Movie Guide 365. In today's video, I will be going over 10 horror movies that were released on the 4K format this year you might want to check out for this Halloween season. I remember a time back when 4K was a relatively new format. Getting a horror movie seemed like a rare occurrence. Of course, you had your action, your sci-fi, those were readily available and still are, but it took a number of years for the various studios and for a lot of boutique labels to pick up the slack and offer titles of the horror genre on 4K. And I've got to say, today, it's almost an embarrassment of riches. We have so many horror movies that are being released, it seems like monthly. Just this month alone, the original A Nightmare on Elm Street has arrived on the 4K format finally. So if you're a horror movie fan, you've been eating really good these last couple of years, especially if you have adopted 4K. So for this list, I thought I would give you 10 horror movies that were released on 4K this past year that, if you're feeling inspired, you may want to watch this Halloween season. So just before I begin, just a quick note, this 10 list is not really ranked in any particular order, so it's not best to worst or anything like that. But also, this is going to be my list. You, of course, will have a very different list, but that's why I encourage you, as always, to put in the comment section below, what 10 horror movies on 4K do you think the rest of us should check out this year? My first pick is a semi-recent release from Shout Factory Scream Factory, who does a really great job, especially when it comes to horror movies from that particular label. And it is one of my most anticipated sequels to arrive on 4K, and that is Poltergeist 2: The Other Side. Visually looks great. It gives you a nice enhancement with HDR and Dolby Vision. Those day scenes look amazing. And it's got a good layer of grain to it. It doesn't look like it's been managed in any sort of way. I think it looks excellent. And then, of course, unlike the first movie that arrived on 4K a number of years ago, this one included a new Dolby Atmos audio track. No, it's not a fundamental game changer for the audio mix, but it kind of gives you a little bit of an indication of what the original movie might have sounded like. I still pray one day that somebody makes an Atmos mix out of the first film and we get a re-release. I would love it. But for the sequel, I think it sounded great. And it's always interesting to revisit this one. The creepy preacher, he makes the film, honestly. But you get a good amount of ghostly activity through the surround environment. It sounds good. So I did a full review if you want to hear my thoughts about the disc. So Poltergeist 2: The Other Side on 4K, I think it's worth checking out this season. And this next one was also semi-recently released from Arrow Video, who is also I would say is one of the top boutique labels out there. And it is the double feature of The Woman and Offspring. I absolutely love these movies as like gritty horror films. And they're both very different from one another. I mean, other than the main character, they're really different, and they tell a unique story, and I think they're really interesting. But if you choose to pick this double feature up on 4K, I think you're going to get a really solid visual and audio experience. It looks great. I believe the first movie was filmed on 16 millimeters, so you do have that raw grittiness to it, and it's a little bit more streamlined for the sequel, The Woman. And it looks great. I think Arrow Video did a great job with this one. It's got a nice HDR layer, Dolby Vision. Looks fine. And then, of course, you have the audio. It was not given an Atmos upgrade. I think because of the low-budget nature of these films, I don't think it really warranted it. But the audio comes through great. And, of course, you have the typical Arrow Video bevy of extras. I really liked how this turned out. It's a really solid double feature of horror, especially the first one. It's really intense at times. But yes, The Woman Offspring from Arrow Video is worth checking out, and hopefully you will do so as well. This next one is another Shout Factory release, which came out earlier this year, and it is one I just love going back to. It is Willys Wonderland. You often hear comparisons between this movie and Five Nights at Freddy's. I feel, in my opinion, that this is a far superior version, mostly because of Nicolas Cage. He's got such a great role. He doesn't speak a word in the entire film, But his reactions to what's happening in this place are priceless. I think it's one of my favorite movies of this past year, watching it on 4K. And the Shout Factory release looks really good. To their credit, the Blu-ray edition already had fabulous picture. It looked fantastic. And the 4K does up the ante a little bit. I wish it would have gotten a Dolby Atmos upgrade. I think that would have really been like the cherry on top. But you get a really solid 5.1 mix. And it's just a wildly entertaining movie. I love going back to it at any time of the year. Nicolas Cage, as always, overperforms in this one to a great effect. He's awesome. I love Willys Wonderland. If you watch that in Five Nights at Freddy's just looks like a kid's movie compared to it. But yeah, check this one out on 4K. It's available as a slipcover and a steelbook from Shout Factory. So for this Halloween season, check it out. I love a good ghost story, and especially ones that come from Korea or Japan. I think they are some of the best out there. For this next pick, the Arrow Video release of Darkwater, it is a very atmospheric type of film. And it's really, it's very cerebral. But I think the Arrow Video 4K release, I wholeheartedly recommend this one that you pick up. Not only do you get a really solid picture quality and audio, the original audio is included here, but the extras are also fantastic. I think this is a very underrated film, and I'm just glad that you have a label such as Arrow Video that will put this one out on 4K for us adopters to really enjoy it. The best visual quality that you can get. If you've never seen it, do a quick read up, but don't read too much into it. Go into it as blind as you can and pick up the 4K, because Darkwater on 4K, it's awesome and it is a definite recommend for this year. I wanted to include this next one because it is probably one of the more recently made horror films, and it is also an import from one of the best international labels out there, Second Sight. For this particular recommendation, You're Next, I think it's a very intense home invasion thriller, and it's great horror all around. I think this is a fantastic 4K release. It looks excellent. Once again, it's more of a gritty type of visual experience, but I think really Second Sight does great work on their 4K releases. I recommend the film. It's intense. It's got some good performances, and it's got some unexpected twists and turns. But yes, the Second Sight release of You're Next is a big recommendation from me, and it's certainly worth importing here. This next selection is another Arrow Video release, which came out just under a month ago. And I know there's divisive opinions about it, but I always liked it. I think it changes the format just enough, but it also gives it like a unique visual look. The 2009 version of Friday the 13th, which came out from Arrow Video. I like revisiting this one quite a bit. I think it really does hold up. It's got a good solid cast to it. It moves at a quick pace, and it does something different with the whole Jason mythology. It's a little bit more grounded than what the original franchise ended up being. I mean, you literally had Jason going to space. Anyway, the Arrow Video release, I think, has a nice visual upgrade, beautiful HDR Dolby Vision layer, and you got a nice solid soundtrack. I wish they would have upgraded the Atmos to this one, but I think the 5.1 still works more than enough. I really am impressed. And of course, the extras. Arrow Video is some of the best out there when it comes to extras. This has a full package from just picture, audio, extras. I think it really works. If you're a fan of the film, check out the 4K. It is well worth the upgrade. My next pick is another Nicolas Cage film that just came out a few weeks ago, and it's a very intense thriller. I've often heard it compared to Silence of the Lambs. I don't buy that at all. I'm talking about Longlegs on 4K, which came out from Neon. I'm still kind of like wrapping my head around the story itself. I'm definitely going to revisit it very shortly, but the horror aspect of this cannot be denied, because I would say in the last couple of years, we generally don't get too many memorable performances when it comes to like a horror villain. But I do feel that Nicolas Cage in this one is right up there. He's right up there. And it's worth checking it out just for his take on this character alone. But with the 4K release, you get a nice visual presentation. It's a little dark, but I think it works for the tone of the film. And this has a very serviceable and pretty immersive 5.1 mix. It's a very interesting film. I would say if there's any nitpick on the 4K disc itself, it's the extras are kind of lackluster. But I do feel that if you're a fan of the film, it's worth picking up on 4K, no doubt about it. So check out Long Lakes for this Halloween haunted season. I think you'll be impressed or at the very least creeped out. I really love in the last couple of years, we've been getting more and more Dario Argento films on 4K. I believe I have everything that's ever been put out from Argento that is available on 4K right now. But for this particular list, let's go with the latest offering that is from Severin, Opera. I love a good thriller, a little bit of a slasher kind of film. And Argento, I feel, crafts them almost better than most. He does a great job. And the Severin release, while very pricey, I believe it's $60 on their website, you get a lot for that money. I mean, it's a very all-encompassing 4K release. There's a lot to enjoy, and I think visually looks great. Nice layer of grain. Colors are tonally appropriate. It fully supports HDR and Dolby Vision, and you get the original audio included with this. And there are also two cuts. You get the, I believe it's the international versus the US cut. And I think there's a lot of extras and there's a lot to enjoy. So if you're an Argento fan and you have to have, or are even very curious about what his films look like on 4K, check out Opera. But as a side note, also one of the best out there is Suspiria. Love that one. But you know, this is for 2024 horror movie releases. So yes, Opera on 4K. If you're an Argento fan, check it out. It's well worth the money. I first caught this film on streaming almost like 2 months ago. And it was such an intense horror film that I needed to get it on 4K. So our friends over at Vinegar Syndrome have the Shudder release of The Sadness. Wow. I don't even want to say anything to spoil this movie, but it is pretty raw of a film. It is not for the squeamish. Let's put it that way. I mean, I've been hearing things about Terrifier 3. I would love to see a side-by-side on these two as far as gore goes. But The Sadness on 4K is released from Vinegar Syndrome. You can get it either from them directly or over at various online retailers. And it's a really clean visual picture on 4K. It looks great. It does. And the audio is also very good. I mean, there's a lot happening in this movie, but do it like me. If you like a good, just raw, gory type of horror film, don't look anything into this. Just go in blind. I think it's honestly the best way to do it. So The Sadness gets a high recommendation for me. So check this one out if you dare. And for my last horror movie recommendation that was released on 4K in 2024 is an Arrow Video release of one of my favorite Guillermo del Toro films, Crimson Peak. Of all the movies on this list, I would say that this is probably quality-wise the best on this list. Just as far as picture, audio, extras, I think it is the complete package. And as I mentioned earlier, I love a good ghost story. And this is Del Toro's Haunted Mansion movie that he wanted to make for Disney that never got to, unfortunately. But I think it's a cool horror film that just looks excellent on 4K. I mean, this is a beautiful picture. And the audio on this, the DTSX, which was released on the Blu-ray previously, holds up incredibly well. It's very immersive. I love everything about it. And the extras on this were also some of my favorite of this year. This particular 4K is going to make another list as we approach the end of 2024, so stay tuned for that. But I cannot recommend Crimson Peak enough to anybody who wants a good horror film on 4K. It's a really one of my highest recommendations, so check this one out. I do not think you'll be disappointed. So those were 10 horror movies that were released on 4K in 2024 that I think you should check out if you are in the mood for something cool this Halloween season. Now it's your turn, of course, in the comments section below. What are your recommendations for the rest of us? Sound off down there. And also, if you're interested in any of the titles I talk about in today's video, I will leave direct links in the comment section. So head on over there to check those out. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. So until next time, this is Adam with Movie Guy 365. I will see you at the movies.